It's almost that time of year. You might be really excited for Christmas, but for a lot of people, I imagine the majority of you are probably feeling that sense of dread already. Because that festive season, even though it's portrayed as this joyful and magical time, if you're a people pleaser, it often comes wrapped in this suffocating sense of pressure of trying to keep everyone happy. And it can feel less of a celebration and more like a marathon of obligations, running around juggling everyone's expectations and this endless pursuit to keep everyone happy. So, today's episode, I'm talking about how people pleasing can suck the fun out of Christmas as you try to make everything fun for everyone else. So, I'll go through some examples of things to look out for to see if you're people pleasing this Christmas. And I'll also explore some steps you can actually take to try and break free from people pleasing and reclaim some festive spirit for yourself because you do deserve it, And if what I've described already just now resonates, you're definitely not alone. Many of us, particularly women, grow up with messages about how we should and shouldn't show up in the world, how we should behave, and we're taught to be good, which society often defines as being polite and not talking back and suppressing what we actually want for the sake of everyone else and being agreeable with everyone and self-sacrificing at the expense of our own needs. And when Christmas comes around, those cultural and social pressures to create this perfect Christmas, it just becomes even more overwhelming. But people pleasing isn't just about being nice and being agreeable. It's a learned coping mechanism, often rooted in a trauma response called the fawn response. So you may have heard of fight, flight, or freeze when it comes to our reactions to stress and trauma. But there's another one called fawn, which is where we appease others to feel safer and more comfortable and to try and avoid conflict. And the thing is, even if there's no physical danger, our nervous system interprets even the risk of rejection or disapproval as a threat in itself because the brain can't distinguish between a physical threat, an actual real threat, and a perceived threat. So it's just trying to protect us if there's even a hint of rejection or something or disapproval in the air. Or even if we just anticipate that, you might find you automatically go into fawning mode. And if you've been conditioned to feel responsible for everyone else's happiness, it's understandable that Christmas for you can be a minefield for this kind of stress response. So I'm going to go through some signs that you can look out for to see if you might be stuck in people-pleasing mode this festive period, and just see if any of these sound familiar. And the first probably one that comes to mind with people-pleasing is saying yes when you want to say no. You're already exhausted, you're juggling loads of things, you're stretched thin, you've got so much on your plate, but another invite comes through or a request comes through to help someone and do something, and you find yourself agreeing to go to this thing or to help someone out. And even if you know it'll drain you, you find yourself saying yes. And it might be like in that moment, you just completely forget, or it doesn't even enter your head how much you're already actually doing. It doesn't enter your head before this automatic yes response kicks in, before you've even had a chance to stop it. Or maybe you have stopped it and you have caught it and you're now thinking and considering saying no, but the thought of trying to find an elaborate enough excuse, because it feels like you can't just say no, you have to have a reason, or the thought of how you might craft a response that sounds okay and doesn't upset anyone, all the thinking behind that, the overthinking and overanalyzing, it might just feel too much to consider. So for you, it probably seems easier to just say yes, and you find yourself saying yes. You might even find yourself volunteering to go the extra mile than what's been requested or hosting something. And even if you felt like a little sliver of excitement about that, it quickly disappears, unfortunately, and is replaced with a sense of dread and stress. Another sign to look out for is feeling the guilt when you do try and prioritise yourself. So maybe you've planned to have bit of quiet time, really rare occasion as quiet time for yourself over Christmas. And you're picturing just you and Love Actually or The Holiday on. But before the film even starts, that guilt creeps in. And you start thinking of everything you should be doing. Like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, or worrying that you've forgotten to do something. And your mind feels so busy. It's like ding, 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 all these thoughts. And because of that, your body's restless as well. And you find yourself checking your phone, like looking on your phone or your to do list, and you're never really switching off. So you might even tell yourself you're being lazy or selfish for taking time for yourself. How dare you take a minute to yourself? You've got all these other things to be doing. But even though rationally you know you're carrying a huge load of responsibility and doing loads of extra tasks for everyone else, that guilt still creeps in. And that is a real sign that you're stuck perhaps in people pleasing mode. Be on the lookout for that one. Another one is being the peacekeeper. If you're a people pleaser, you may have this unspoken role assigned to you of peacekeeper in the family or your friendship group. And if there are disagreements or conflicts, it always seems to be you who feels responsible for sorting it out and mediating. You're the go-to person to help with that. At family gatherings, when tension arises, you might find that you step in to keep the peace, maybe making jokes to lighten the mood or changing the subject for everyone, even if that means brushing aside your own feelings and discomfort. You put everyone else's comfort first because you hate the thought of conflict, even when you know deep down it's not actually your responsibility or it's nothing to do with you, because it feels like it is. It feels like you have to step in because it feels too much. Another thing to look out for is overcommitting to the point of exhaustion. So, stuff I've touched on already, but you might find you're filling your diary with festive events, baking, prepping, shopping, decorating, wrapping presents, and you're the organizer of most or all things. Maybe it's about wanting to create special memories for other people or aiming for everything to be perfect so everyone has a lovely Christmas. But in the end, that pressure you're putting on yourself, it makes you so exhausted, and you can start feeling resentful of those people in your life that don't seem to care as much. They don't seem to share your passion, or they're saying it's not a big deal, but to you it really matters. So you start feeling resentful because they just don't seem to get it, and then it takes your joy away from it all. A big thing at Christmas with people pleasers is a tendency to put off difficult conversations and maybe avoid stuff that's bothering you. Unfortunately, it's not uncommon to have someone that you're perhaps dreading seeing over Christmas. You might notice a real physical reaction when you think about them, when you think about spending time with them, a feeling of dread or something similar, or like anxiety. And you feel torn between this sense of obligation and of not wanting to go. And even when your body and your mind are screaming that you don't want to go, you know you don't want to go, you just find yourself going. And once there, you might notice yourself overcompensating. So it's that form response kicking in. You're trying to appease them, you're smiling more than you normally would, or, how you're coming across doesn't match how you feel. You're trying extra hard to please them. And even instead of leaving when you've had enough, you might agree to things like, oh yeah, I'll just have one more drink, I'll have some crackers and cheese with you. And it's all to avoid this feeling of conflict. And you might even agree to end up like hosting for people that you're dreading seeing, but it just leaves you feeling drained because they trigger in you that form response, that people pleasing mode, and it leaves you knackered from all the energy it takes. So really look out for that. And within the people pleasing mode, being hyper focused on what people may or may not be thinking of you. You might be really worrying about judgment, being criticised or spoken about over Christmas. Maybe it's even like how your house looks. You find yourself saying, excuse the mess, when they come into your home, even though you've spent hours cleaning every corner, including the skirting boards, but you still find yourself saying it. Or you might start stressing and overthinking about whether or not the gifts that you've spent time researching, if they're actually good enough, or if you've spent enough money, or what if they've spent more money than me, and all those worries just going round in your head. And you start doubting yourself maybe, or you're preoccupied with how even your family dynamic appears to outsiders. And this preoccupation and need to and want to look perfect on the outside, it can strip you of that authenticity that you truly crave, keeping you from experiencing any real joy or any real connection that you want. A real sign of being a people pleaser is feeling that sense of dread leading up to Christmas. And it's horrible to say, isn't it? But it can feel that way. Instead of excitement, you feel this heavy sense of pressure, overthinking, overwhelmed, overanalyzing. Even in the build up, just mentally preparing for the demands ahead. You might be playing out scenarios or talking things through with someone, seeking reassurance and, wanting to double check, I've bought this, what do you think? And things like that. It's a lot of energy it takes up. You might have even found that you've agreed to do something and now the time's come, you don't want to. So you're trying to think of excuses to get out of plans that you've agreed to purely out of the obligation. So those are some of the signs or ways people pleasing can manifest during this time of year. And one thing to note within all that is the aftermath of all that people pleasing. By the time Boxing Day comes around, you might find yourself feeling completely burnt out, completely spent from all the running around that you've been doing, as well as the suppressing that you've been doing, and the masking how you really feel and presenting yourself in a particular way. You then feel so exhausted from it that you can't enjoy any of your own very rare downtime. You've used up all your energy reserves, and now your body's like, oh, I just can't deal with anything else. Your body's reminding you then that you need rest, and it might lead to physical symptoms as it tries to tell you to rest, like migraines or stomach issues. Or you might notice that there's this feeling of being emotionally numb, and that's where your nervous system may have shifted from this state of go, 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 hyper arousal, loads of cortisol in your system, and it shifted from that to what we call hypoarousal, where your body's just shut down after being in overdrive for so long. And that emotional aftermath might also include begrudging that you've had to be the organizer yet again. You've been the one carrying the load, adapting to everyone else's needs, and then that resentment that creeps up, it can overspill and it can linger well into the new year too. And it can leave you feeling disconnected, maybe alone and distant from those people you were trying so hard to please and make everything perfect for. Or maybe the aftermath includes this real sense of sadness, a sense that once again, you put your needs last despite wanting to put them first, and you've lost another chance to feel any real magic of the season that you'd really hoped to feel this year. And it can feel sad, it can feel horrible. So it's one thing, isn't it, to recognise that you might be stuck in people pleasing habits and the consequences of that. It's another thing to make real changes, especially around Christmas. So I'm going to talk a bit about steps you can take to try and break free from these cycles of certain behavioural and thought patterns that you find yourself falling into. And one thing I've not mentioned yet is the pressure that you can feel from social media. So when everyone else's family's looking perfect, you're scrolling through, maybe Instagram, whatever, and it can be really tough when you're already feeling the weight of holiday expectations and pressure. And then you look and it seems like everyone else has this big, happy, fun-loving family that gathers together joyfully in their matching Christmas pajamas, like something out of a magazine. Or you might see pictures of, perfectly decorated homes, families laughing together, these huge Christmas meals, and everyone's wearing the party hats, having a laugh like some sort of, I don't know, John Lewis Christmas advert or something. And if your own family isn't as close, or they don't celebrate in that perfect, picture perfect way, it can really increase feelings of inadequacy within us or sadness. So if you notice those thoughts and feelings, it might be helpful to remember that social media often showcases this highlight reel of people's lives. It's not the behind the scenes reality. Like, we're not being exposed to that. People are hiding stuff, they're masking, as we all do at times. And many of those smiling photos that you're seeing just don't tell the full story of stress and the disagreements and the conflicts that are going on, or people putting on a brave face because they as well might be following these expected traditions or obligations that they don't want to be following as well. You can relate to that. And if seeing these images triggers feelings of loss or disappointment for yourself, just give yourself permission to step away, like stop the doom scrolling, put your phone down, even if you have to leave it in another room, because if it's there, it might be really easy just to keep picking it up because it's habitual. And take a mini social media detox if it helps. It's not uncommon for people during this time of year to really experience feelings of grief or longing for this different kind of family experience at Christmas. Allow yourself to acknowledge that and feel those feelings without judgment. You know, it's okay to wish these things were different. In most cases, it's probably completely understandable to want things to be different. Consider how you can create moments of connection or comfort in your own way, in a different way, even if your family situation looks different to what you're seeing on social media. When we talk about breaking free from people pleasing at Christmas, it can be tricky when you and your partner might have different Christmas traditions, and navigating like festive traditions with a partner just adds another layer of complexity, because maybe you grew up having small, quiet Christmases, just a few people. And in contrast, perhaps your partner might have come from a big, loud, bustling like family where Christmases are packed with activities and noise. Or it could be the reverse, where you crave excitement and energy of a large gathering, but your partner feels overwhelmed by it. And this difference can be tricky to navigate, especially if you're a people pleaser and want to like suppress yourself to keep everyone else happy. And it can cause tension within the relationship, because perhaps you're trying to decide what to do for the best. And when both of you want to honour the traditions maybe you've grown up with and what you know, then potentially it can feel like there's conflict in the air. So some ways to help navigate this are to talk about it. And it sounds dead obvious, doesn't it? Yeah, no, talk about it. But talk about it before Christmas comes along. And I know it sounds obvious, but it can be so easy to assume, like make these assumptions about how they're going to respond if we bring something up, or what they really want but they're not saying. Making assumptions just leads to so many like misunderstandings within the relationship. So if you can, find some time and talk about it well before Christmas. So sit down together and discuss what each of you hopes for and what each of you needs from Christmas and from the festive season, you know, and be honest about what feels overwhelming for you or what matters to you. And when you're doing it, practice using I statements to express what you feel and want, and that can reduce the chance of the other person getting defensive. So you might say something like, I'd really like a quieter Christmas this year where we can spend more quality time together. You might say something like that rather than, when you make me see your family, it stresses me out. And then give your partner the opportunity to share how they think and feel too. And remember, it's both of you sharing what you think and feel, because if you're a people pleaser, you won't be used to that. And that way you can both set expectations and compromises and avoid misunderstandings later. And you can approach it as more of a team feeling than being on your own with it, and find a balance between you both. Like consider alternating years or splitting time between different types of celebrations. And if you struggle and know your partner's family gatherings are loud and overstimulating for you, discuss how you can build in some alone time to recharge, or set a limit on how long you'll stay for, and discuss that with your partner in advance so you're both on the same side. Perhaps think about taking a walk outside to get some fresh air if you need a break. And remember, you don't need to explain that to everyone, but I completely get it if it feels easier to make make an excuse for that. So you might say, "Oh, I need to take a phone call. I'm going to ring someone," or "I need to walk my food off." You know, anything that makes it easier for you to implement that will be helpful. And as a couple, you might decide that you actually want to make your own traditions. Is there something that you can both do for you both and create a tradition out of it, whether it be like a special Christmas Eve tradition, or going for a lovely walk in the morning, or having a games night with friends? This is your opportunity to create new patterns and new traditions that better suit what you want and need from Christmas. And it sounds obvious, right? But it's so easy to forget that we are adults now and we have a choice and we can decide what we want to do, because especially when Christmas is quite a trigger for us, it can make you like revert back to feeling how you felt as a child. And therefore, we forget that we're adults and have choices. So reminding yourself of that can be helpful to break free from these cycles as well. When it comes to thinking about a Christmas you want and need, you might have no clue what it is you want and need, because you've been so used to prioritizing everyone else's needs and wants and their happiness and doing everything for everyone, that it's easy to lose touch with what you might like. To break free from the people pleasing mode, it'll be helpful for you to set aside some quiet time to actually reflect on it. And if you struggle with that, just consider if you woke up having had a Christmas you wanted, no one was upset by it, no one was in a mood with you hadn't let anyone down, you didn't feel guilty, you weren't worried because everything had gone okay, it was all fine. What would that Christmas have looked like for you? What would your vision of that Christmas be? So it could be just having a peaceful morning with loved ones, enjoying a nice meal, and then spending the rest of the time just having a rest. Or it might include spending most of the day in your pajamas watching films without feeling pressured to see anyone. Whatever it is, make a list from that of what matters most to you, maybe a list of top 3 priorities, and keep that list somewhere visible. So it might be on your phone or even on a post-it note in your car so you can see it. And then you can remind yourself of what those needs of yours are, what you want. And when new invites or new requests of you come in, ask yourself, if I agree to these things, are they in line with what my priorities are? Do they help me have a Christmas that I really want? Or are they going to cause me to feel too drained to engage in the stuff that matters to me? Will this help me experience the Christmas that I actually want this year? And then, as always, breaking free from these old patterns does require setting boundaries. And I know it's easier said than done. If it were easy, we wouldn't need to be told, just set boundaries, would we? But remember, setting boundaries does not have to be harsh. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It can be done with warmth and with respect. And if you need to soften it to make it feel easier, you are allowed to. Whatever you need to set that boundary. Just, if it makes it easier initially to do it softly, that's fine. You don't have to suddenly think, right, no, if I'm setting a boundary, I have to do it properly. Da, da, da. Just be clear and direct while staying true to what you need. So if you have an invite through that you can't attend or you don't want to, you might say something like, I'd love to join you, but I have to say no as I've just so much going on at the minute. I'm just absolutely shattered. Or it might be, thanks so much for thinking of me, but I've already got so much on my plate this year. I won't be able to come. Or that sounds so nice, thanks so much, but I'm just absolutely knackered. Maybe we can catch up in the new year. If it feels daunting, try practicing with maybe smaller boundaries with people you feel safer with at first. So if you're used to always saying yes to last minute plans, you could practice saying no, but to something that feels like low stakes. And with all this comes the inevitable feeling of guilt at times. But remember, putting a boundary in place isn't because you're going to be saying no to everything and you don't want to help anyone out and it's me first all the way. It's more about thinking of it in terms of me too. You're trying to find some balance and some space for you. So try and reframe it from me first to practicing me too. So your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to set a boundary for yourself despite the guilt. These feelings are temporary, remember, and I know it's horrible. It's horrible to feel guilt, but they are temporary. And try and remind yourself of that as well. And reframe as well how you're viewing guilt. Feeling guilty doesn't mean that you've done something wrong, even though it feels like you have. It feels like you've done something awful. Guilt simply means that you are breaking some unspoken rule that's been imposed on you by the environment you grew up in, usually. The guilt is a sign that you're stepping out of your comfort zone and you're finally challenging these old ingrained patterns. So when the guilt shows up, pause and ask yourself, what imposed rule am I breaking here? Who imposed it? Where's it come from? For example, it might be a rule of you must agree to do everything everyone asks of you, or if you say no, then you're a bad person. And just think of that rule. Actually consider it objectively. Is that a rule you would impose on someone you love, your child or your best friend or your partner? Hopefully not. But try reminding yourself of this and then ask, what would you say to a friend who felt this way? And notice the tone of voice and the words of reassurance you'd use. And even if you don't fully believe it yet, you're still feeling the guilt, just practice talking to yourself with the same kindness you would a friend or a loved one. And over time, it will make a difference. And part of undoing or breaking these patterns will also be part of letting go of the need to be perfect, because perfectionism and people pleasing often go hand in hand, especially around the festive period. As I said before, there's this pressure to create a flawless Christmas, have it perfect, great decorated tree, gourmet meal, ideal gifts for everyone. But striving for that perfection only drains you further of your energy. and it robs you of enjoying that present moment. So the next time you catch yourself stressing over those details of how your tree looks or how the food is or the presents, ask yourself, will this really matter next month? More often than not, the answer is no. And I know it's easier said than done, but just practice letting go of carrying all the load and the responsibilities. Even if it feels easier because you don't quite trust someone to do it your way or to do it right, try and delegate tasks to family members or friends, despite the discomfort you might feel. And if you feel guilty about that, consider they might actually relish the chance to help you out. They might not like seeing you stressed and they might want some input this year. And simplifying things as well might help, like, buying pre-made desserts instead of feeling like you have to do everything from scratch, or not cleaning the skirting boards before people come round, or skipping traditions that feel more like a chore than any joy. Just see if that helps sort of break those patterns of perfectionism that can creep in with the people pleasing. And then one that you might find really difficult in terms of breaking free from people pleasing is saying yes to you. Make time for yourself. Really, when you prioritize everyone else, it's easy to let your self-care and even the basics like fall to the bottom of your to-do list. But rest and downtime is essential, especially at Christmas when you're like, go, go, go. Because the more you can give to yourself, the more energy you'll have to give to others in a meaningful way. It's like putting your own oxygen mask on first, or realizing you can't pour from an empty cup, as they say. So block out time for rest on your calendar in the lead up to Christmas and during Christmas and Boxing Day and everything. And treat it as a non-negotiable appointment with yourself. Even if it's just 15 to 30 minutes, it all counts. And it could mean that you then get time for reading a book that you've not had a chance to read, or having a bath or a walk, anything that you enjoy. And if someone asks you to do something during that time, you can say, oh, I'm sorry, I've already got plans. And yes, plans with yourself does count. And if your mind tends to race with all the stress of Christmas, you could try grounding techniques just to help you refocus on what's going on in the present moment. A really easy one, if you like, that you can implement anywhere is the 5 4 3 2 1 technique, which is where you name 5 things you can see around you and look and hone in on the detail of those 5 things to yourself. 4 things you can feel, really noticing the texture. 3 things you can hear around you. Maybe 2 things you can smell and 1 thing you can taste, and really notice the detail within it all. And that exercise can help redirect your attention from your busy mind and bring you back to what's going on now. Even if it's just for a little while, it can help. When you're breaking free from people pleasing, practice treating yourself with the kindness you deserve. And I know I've touched on this already, but when you notice self-critical thoughts like, I'm ruining Christmas or I've not done enough, just pause and ask yourself, would I be saying that to a friend if I knew they were doing what I've been doing? You probably wouldn't. I hope you wouldn't anyway. So when things do get tough, use phrases like, oh, I'm doing the best I can and that's enough, or what would I be saying to a friend right now? And just practice saying it to yourself. And remind yourself it's okay if things aren't 100% perfect. Your worth isn't tied to how well you perform. It might feel awkward at first, but with practice, that self-compassion that you can develop can be real powerful antidote to the guilt and the anxiety of people pleasing. On an ending note, breaking free from people pleasing is a gift, not only to yourself, but to the people you love as well, the ones that you have been trying to make sure are happy all the time. By prioritizing your own well-being, you are creating space, time, and energy for genuine connections and joy. So this Christmas, just remember you deserve to experience the magic too. And if you can take small steps, be kind to yourself, and embrace the idea you don't have to carry all these expectations, pressure, and burdens alone. You can share the load. You are an adult and you have choices, and you can decide how you want your Christmas to look, even though I realise it can be easier said than done. I hope you found this helpful. I realise there may have been parts about Christmas that I've missed out, but I've tried my best to include what I can in a reasonable length of time for you so you don't lose interest. I hope that you do find some of these ideas helpful and you are able to implement them. And I hope you have a lovely Christmas. And if all these ideas that I've been mentioning or you observe during Christmas, it all does feel too much, please know that it's not uncommon and there is stuff you can do about it. You can change these patterns that you find yourself falling into. I'm proof of that, and so are so many people I've worked with. If you do want to get some support with it or explore what therapy might have to offer you, please feel free to get in touch. I do offer a free initial chat that you can book into straight from my website, charlottebaileytherapist.com. Probably if you've been listening to me for a while now or you've seen me on Instagram, you'll know how passionate I am and I would love to help and support you. But until next time, I will see you soon.